Steve Kornacki is with us from the big board to dig into some key races we're following. Steve, good morning. What are you watching today?
Yeah, let's take you through a couple things, Jose, just piggybacking off what you were just talking about there with Gary in Virginia. It is control of the state legislature. This is what it looks like right now. The House of Delegates, Republicans control. The state Senate, Democrats control. As you just heard, abortion front and center in this campaign. Huge, record-shattering sums of money for state legislative races being spent here. But Glenn Youngkin, the Republican governor, thinks he has found a sort of moderate position on abortion that Republicans can use and win on in Virginia and export to other states nationally. That's been one of the challenges for Republicans since Roe v. Wade was overturned a year ago. He thinks a 15-week limit with exceptions for rape, incest, danger to mother's life is a winning political position. Tonight is a test of that. There was a poll a couple weeks ago of Virginia voters on that question. Do you support or oppose a limit at 15 weeks? Basically right down the middle, 46 support, 47 oppose. So very interesting to see how that plays out tonight. Democrats certainly believe this has been an animating issue, one that could help them as well in 2024. If Republicans have a good night in Virginia, this might be a tactic and approach what Youngkin's proposed that you start seeing in other states from Republicans in 2024. Then you had Kentucky as well there, Beshear, Cameron. The dynamic, as Shaq said, Beshear is a popular governor. He's well-liked. He has high approval ratings. But keep in mind, it's Kentucky. It's a very red state. And when Beshear won 4 years ago, that's what you're seeing here. This is the 2019 race when Beshear first won the governorship. He won, but he beat a very unpopular Republican and barely at that by just over 5,000 votes. So what that means is you look at this map from 2019, Beshear, based on this map, has very little margin for error. And there are a lot of counties here that are typically extremely Republican in national races. Look in the eastern part of the state. These are very Republican counties that Beshear actually won in 2019. And these are counties where Donald Trump's going to get like 70% of the vote. Beshear actually won them. The Cincinnati suburbs, a pretty big population area there in Kentucky. 2 of those 3 counties right outside Cincinnati, Beshear actually won. Trump swept them in 2020. So the thing to look for tonight as these results start coming in, if any of this blue is disappearing from the map, that's a very bad sign for Beshear because, again, he can't really afford any slippage from 2019. But conversely, if these areas are staying blue, if they're getting bluer in any way, or if he's adding blue counties to this, then it's a sign that that personal popularity, that job approval rating really is resonating and is powering him to a victory. But this is a test. As Shaq just said, Joe Biden, National Democratic Party, very unpopular in Kentucky. That's part of the message that Daniel Cameron, the Republican, is running on. Basically saying, hey, you may like Andy Beshear, but if you don't like Biden, you don't like the National Democrats, don't vote for their party. Let's see how potent that message is. And it's a very similar story in Mississippi. Tate Reeves, the Republican incumbent, being challenged by Democrat Brandon Presley. Remember, Tate Reeves, 4 years ago, when he got elected for the first time, it was also a pretty close race. Very Republican state. It was a 5-point margin for Tate Reeves. He's not been the most, he does not have the kind of approval rating and personal high favorability that Beshear has in Kentucky. And you take a look here, Presley, his Democratic opponent, has run some conservative themes that could resonate in Mississippi. He calls himself, pro-life from womb to tomb is the term he's used. So again, if Reeves is going to hang on and get reelected in Mississippi, it's that same dynamic we're talking about in Kentucky. He's leaning on antipathy toward Joe Biden and the National Democratic Party, taking voters who may not be nuts about Reeves and who may actually like Presley, but they end up voting party over personality. In both states, it's a test of that. Democrats will be very relieved if the personality side of it can win out, certainly in Kentucky, and Republicans, I think, would be encouraged if that anti-Biden sentiment is so potent, it helps them in both states.
And Steve, real quick, back to Kentucky, those districts you were showing us that went Democrat for, in an unusual manner because of the last election. Are those districts that turned blue traditionally, you were saying, red, or is it that they change depending on if it's a presidential versus a gubernatorial race?
Yeah, I mean, it's a couple things. In the press, there's 120 counties in Kentucky. When Joe Biden ran against Donald Trump in 2020 and Trump won the state overwhelmingly, of those 122 voted for Joe Biden. And it's Jefferson, that's where Louisville, the big population center is. And it's Fayette, that's where Lexington, the other big population center is. Everything else was red in the Trump-Biden race. So in a federal race, in a race for the presidency, that's the kind of dynamic you're going to get. The interesting thing here, when you look at like eastern Kentucky in these blue counties. This used to be, if you went back a generation, this would have been a bad showing for a Democrat. But the politics of these counties have changed so dramatically in a generation, going from Democratic to staunchly Republican. I mean, again, you're looking at counties here where Donald Trump is going to get 75% of the vote. But Bashir was able to make a connection with those voters in a lot of these and just vastly outperform what Joe Biden and what national Democrats typically get. So that's a big thing to look for tonight here. Does that continue? Or again, does that antipathy towards the National Democratic Party start painting those counties red?